Alright guys, welcome back to the shop. So today is going to be a little bit more of an unorthodox video because today is a shopping day. So anytime I have a big project, I try to save all of the shopping that I need to do for one day at the very beginning. Or if I find that there's other tools, supplies, and that I need during a different project, like this other bed frame here, then I'll save it up until I know I have another big shopping day coming here. So the reason that I do this is just purely to save money on gas. Pretty much all the places that I buy my supplies, my materials, my wood from are all centralized in one area of Calgary, which is super convenient, but it's also fairly far south. So it kind of sucks for me living up north to drive all the way down south for one or two things just to drive back up north. So I placed orders at a few different places that we're going to be going and stopping at. We're also going to do a bottle depot run because again, that's just randomly down there, nice and easy on the way. Then we're going to be finishing off the day with picking up some lumber for a new project, which we're going to go talk about in just a second here. Then once we get everything back to the shop, I'll kind of break down, what we're doing, all the stuff that's coming up. But first off, we're going to jump onto the computer. I'm going to show you guys how I break down my 3D models so I know what lumber I'm going to get, because it's always important before you actually go out to pick up your lumber to know what you actually need. So now looking at the SketchUp model, you can see that we're building another king-size bed. So funny enough, this is actually the first king-size bed that I was planning to make. I had a customer approach me. They wanted me to give them a quote, pricing and different design options for a king-size bed. So when I put all that together, I sent the package to them. Then I also sent the package to another customer. So they just ended up confirming first. So this is the original bed frame that I was planning to do. And so you can see here just how I decide what lumber I need to get when I'm going to the lumber yard. And so it's super simple because all I need to do here is just take out all the pieces from the 3D model here and lay them out onto boards. And so you can see I've got two different setups here. On the bottom, we have 10-foot boards. On the top here, we have 8-foot boards. Because the lumberyard that I go to, sometimes they have maple and 8-foot boards, sometimes they have maple in 10-foot boards. It's completely random. Every time I go there, it's something different. But anyway, the reason I like doing it this way is because I can see exactly what my best options are. And so the interesting thing here is you can see that between the two different board sets, so on the left-hand side here, we have 10-foot boards. On the right-hand side, we have these 8-foot boards. You can see that I'm getting pretty much the same use out of each of the boards. We have a little bit of space at the top here, a little bit of space at the top here. A little bit more here, a little bit more here. And so with the 8-quarter stock that I need, it doesn't really matter if I go with 10-foot or 8-foot, I'm going to end up with the exact same amount of wood overall. I also figured out a standardized width that kind of works. So these boards are all 8.5 inches wide, which means I can easily get two 4-inch pieces out of them. That's the exact same thing I did on the walnut bed that I'm currently working on. For all the floating panels, you can see that this bed, compared to the one that we're working on right now, has a lot more panels to it. We've got them going all the way down the side, all down the front, more down the side, and then we've got the bigger ones on the back. The headboard here is also 56 inches tall compared to the 47-inch tall one that we're working on right now. So overall, this is a much more hefty bed, and there's going to be a lot more involved in building these frames. So I know to get these 12-inch wide panels that I'm going to need, we're going to need at least 13 inches worth of wood, because I like to have at least a ½ inch on either side of just material that you can mill away. Again, the nice thing about these panels is that we're not really trying to go for any kind of grain continuity here. The customer in this case wasn't all that interested in having, a perfect grain flow or anything like that when I told them it would be a little bit extra. Because as you can see here, if we can definitely do it on certain areas. So like we might do the footboard as a perfect grain flow, but at least on one of the side rails, we're going to have to break that perfect grain flow, which is, again, not that big of a deal. It's one of those things that is a super subtle touch anyway. Most people don't pick up on it. But it is also one of those things that it would just be an extra cost, because in order to do that perfect grain flow all the way through, you can see just how much material here I would have to waste. We'd have to buy two whole extra boards that would then add into the whole cost of things. On the bottom side here, these are the panels for the headboard. And you can see that we got a couple boards missing here. And that's because the plan is to use up the excess material back here, so I know that I can get two extra pieces out of each of these leftover lengths to fit into the panels down here. So that's kind of what's going on here. Then same thing with the 8-foot boards. The 8-foot boards is actually the ideal. If I can get 4-quarter by 8-foot boards, that is the ideal setup, because that's kind of that's the best use case here. As you can see, these three spaces at the end of these three boards here would all fit perfectly to fill in this last row on the headboard panels. So overall, that is kind of the ideal that I'm going for. But again, I think if I remember correctly, I'm expecting 10-foot boards, but for the most part, I'm hoping for 8-foot boards because they're a little bit easier to transport, and overall, they give me a little bit better materials. So now all I have to do is bring my little scratch pad here to the lumberyard, and I know exactly what I want to get. But anyway, we're just going to go jump in the truck and get on our way now, because we've got a lot of shopping to do, and I'm quite excited to go pick up some of the new tools that I'm getting today. Okay, so back from picking up the lumber and doing a little bit of other shopping. So we're gonna lay everything out on the bench. I'm gonna get the lumber unloaded and stacked somewhere out of the way. Hopefully have somewhere out of the way to stack it. And then we'll kind of go through some of the stuff and just kind of talk about it. And so I want to apologize. I was hoping to capture some like cool footage of driving through Calgary and all that, driving down Deerfoot, which is a bloody nightmare, all that kind of stuff. But my GoPro, which I was trying to use to record that video, it just wasn't having it today. It would record for like 5 seconds and then shut off completely. So I don't know what was up with that, but I apologize that I didn't have cool footage of my home city to show off here. So we now have a whole bunch of crap on the bench here, and I'm sure you guys were kind of guessing at what some of the purchases were going to be today. But anyway, let's go kind of chronologically through the order here. So Firmly Valley, probably the most prominent thing that is kind of to do with both of our projects here is a set of actual bed bolts. So this is a set of 4, and you can see that that's a much different piece of hardware compared to what we're using on the current bed frame. So quite a bit different. The nice thing about it though is it has these brass barrel nuts, which means this will slot right into a 5/8 hole, and then all I have to do is just line up the 2 holes. So we'll have to see how well they work. Also, we've got a giant 3/4 inch roundover bit. Like I said, we're gonna be using this on all the outside edges of the bed frame here. So on the headboard, footboard, side rails especially, they're gonna have that nice, gigantic 3/4 inch roundover. So I'm absolutely terrified to put this into the router because I'm probably gonna start with like a 3/8 roundover, then step it up to this 3/4 roundover, just try and take some material off before I go at it with this, but I might just try going for it. Because that is a very big bit. I don't know if I own any bits that are that big, and it's quite a hefty one too. So I'm excited to get this to work because that's going to be very cool once we actually get to add in those big roundovers. Then we also have a couple different finishes. So for the bed frame I'm working on right now, I got some more tried and true. You guys know I love this stuff. This is the Varnish Oil, and it looks like it's leaking a little bit. But so the Varnish Oil is going to do an amazing job on the walnut. Plus the Varnish Oil, you can get it up to a nice satin sheen if you just polish it a little bit after each coat. So I really like the Varnish Oil. If you're looking into using tried and true oils, for furniture, I generally recommend the Varnish Oil. For, cutting boards or smaller products, stuff that you're going to touch a lot more, then I recommend the original oil. You can also use the Danish oil, which is just basically linseed oil. For the maple bed frame, I got some Pauling Satin oil. So this is another hard wax oil, and it's meant for wood furniture and floors. So it's supposed to be a much heavier duty finish. This is a much more expensive finish. The can of Tried and True, this is a 940 milliliter can, was $50. This is a 700 milliliter can for, I think it was $72. So a slightly more expensive finish, but from what I've read is that this is supposed to have less of an effect on maple. It's supposed to yellow it a lot less compared to linseed oil based oils. Because whatever the mixture is in this Osmo stuff, it's supposed to be really good for it. So I'm going to try that on this project because as you guys saw, well, it depends on how long you've been following me, the maple dresser that I built a while back and the one that we just refinished the drawers on, that has yellowed quite a bit just because we used linseed oil on it, I'm guessing. So it's yellowed quite a bit. So I would like to try and avoid that on this maple bed frame. I'm not willing to use like a water-based finish because I don't like water-based finishes. So I think that this Pauling oil is going to be a really good choice. So I'm just looking at the ingredients on here, and it is a really, really different product than the Tried and True. So I will say that there are definitely a lot of more chemicals and stuff in here. Like there is naphtha in here, which is kind of terrifying. But it does comply with Environment Canada VOC regulations. I don't know what that means, but I'm still going to wear a respirator around this stuff. So in case you guys were wondering, I do mostly recommend Tried and True because that's what I've used on the most projects. But Osmo is one that I'm really excited to use on this maple bed frame because I think it is going to make it look a little bit better than the Tried and True. Last thing from Lee Valley is a straight edge guide for the next thing we're going to talk about in a second here. But yeah, this just mounts onto a Traxxar's track to give you a nice perfectly square reference. So that's going to be really important for this project. Then obviously on the most exciting part, a sustainer type case from Makita. Probably the most exciting purchase of the day. I'm super excited to have one of these in the shop. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, the shop has felt kind of empty without some kind of a sustainer system around. So I'm really excited to introduce this into the shop. Anyway, that's obviously a joke. This was the sustainer case and the track bed. There was a flyer sale at KMS Tools to get these for $1 each. I figured why not? It's basically free, so that's why they're here. But I wouldn't have bought them otherwise. So then obviously the big purchase of the day was a Makita 6.5 inch Traxxar plunge cut circular saw. Now I talked about this in the bed frame that we're currently working on, how I think that a Traxxar is going to be the solution to cutting my ends square, cleaning up or doing the tenon work and all that. So I think I have high hopes that this is going to be overall a better solution. But this is also the best solution just in general to the shop because now I can do more stuff with panels. When I do breadboard ends on tabletops and that, I can make sure that I have that square edge because again, I've been using that circular saw to do all of my breadboard ends in that, so it's no wonder that I've had some issues with those in the past. So I'm hoping that this will just kind of solve all of my circular saw issues that I've had in the shop. But you might be wondering why I didn't go with Festool or DeWalt or Triton, any of the other brands, and mainly Festool because that's the one that everyone is kind of obsessed with. The biggest thing is just price point. So this Makita saw that I got, plus the 55-inch track that I got behind me here, was a total of $619. Then it was an extra $2 for that other stuff, which is just kind of fun. The equivalent Festool saw that comes with the track is $900. So the one thing I could not justify was the extra $300 for the Festool. Because looking all over online, all that I was really getting that the difference between the Makita and the Festool is that the Festool is just better. There wasn't really a good enough explanation for me. There wasn't something that was enough of a selling feature on the Festool versus the Makita to just make it worth that much more. But the biggest thing is the track cost, because the track cost is what's going to play into especially what we're going to be doing in a couple days here. And that is this Makita track, the 55-inch one, is $84. The same 55-inch Festool track is 200 something bucks. So I don't remember exactly what it is, but I know it's over 200. That's a massive difference. And what we're going to be doing with this Makita track in order to make it so that we can actually square up the ends of these boards. Now this might sound crazy to a lot of people, but I found that it's actually a pretty common thing. The whole purpose of these tracks is that you cut them down to be the size that you need them to be. And so eventually I would rebuy another 55-inch track and keep it as a 55-inch track. I'd probably buy 2 more of them and some joinery things so that I could, break down sheets of plywood and that kind of stuff. But for now, the most important thing that I need in the shop is just some way to break down long boards. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to take about 15 or 20 inches off of one end, then I'll still be left with a good long section that I can use to do, work on small tables and stuff like that. So these 2 small sections that I'm going to cut this one track into are going to be great to just have around the shop. And again, as soon as I need a longer track, all I have to do is go and buy it, and it's only $84. Whereas with the Festool one, if I was to cut that down, then when I need a new one, that's $200. So that's a very big price difference, and I couldn't find any measurable quantitative reason to go with the Festool over the Makita. Obviously, Festool is going to be better. I know that, I understand it, because at this point in time, I don't need the best of the best tools, so I think that this Makita is going to be just about perfect for what I need. Then the final thing from KMS Tools, that is probably the thing that is most of you have been anticipating, is a new hard pad for my Bosch sander. So we've been talking about the Cubitron stuff. This is a new hard pad. I'm going to see this. So this is a brand new pad. As you can see, it's still in the packaging, has never been used. We're going to see what the Cubitron 2 does with this new hard pad. So this is actually going to be the first thing we're going to test because, well, it's quick, it's easy, and I just kind of want to get it over with because I really don't know if it's going to fix the problems, and I'm afraid I just spent 20 bucks on something that is not going to solve my issues. Okay, so we have a brand new Bosch pad and 3M Cubitron 2 80 grit mesh discs. So if we put them together, we get to now see what is going to happen. I don't have high hopes. I don't want to put it down too much, but I don't have high hopes. I'm going to give it the best chance I can. I'm just kind of spinning it around, getting as much on there as I possibly can, making sure we got full Velcro adhesion, really giving it its best chance, and let's see. Yeah, that's a problem. So okay, so again, brand new Bosch pad, fresh from the store, with this Cubitron 2 mesh stuff, and you can see it just comes right off. So I'm gonna mount this up on the sander and just turn it on, and we'll see if the disc gets sent flying. That's disappointing. Like that just falls right off. There's no grippiness to that at all. Oh. Like I said, I do not like this stuff whatsoever. I don't know how the rest of you have gotten so lucky to make this stuff work, but again, I don't know if it's Bosch or it's 3M, but one of these two things has a serious issue. So as all of you have suggested, getting a new pad for the bottom of the sander here. So this is the brand new pad, brand new piece of Cubitron 2 mesh, and let's see... So you can see where the disc started to shift when I turn it on, but it seemed to kind of stabilize after that, and it seemed to hold just fine. I mean, you can see it on the edges. It starts to peel off when you get spinning up full speed. But all that being said, I am more than willing to just give this a shot. Once we start getting sanding on everything else, it's holding the pads just a little bit better. So, I mean, that's really all I can ask for right now. They just need something that will hold the pads in place so that I don't have to chase them all over the place. But yeah, it is starting to slip off, so we're still not really getting great adhesion here. And I can just peel the pad right off. So I don't know I don't think this is a solution. I still stand by my statement that this stuff is really bad. Specifically the mesh stuff. I think a lot of people are confusing because there's basically 3 different types of Cubitron too. There's the mesh, there's the ones that have a million little holes in them, then there's the discs that have just no holes in them at all. Now these I found actually worked really well, but I couldn't ever order them. You know, you can't actually specifically order the ones without holes for some reason. Because these ones on this fresh pad, there's a lot of, you know, they held on really well, and all you have to do is just punch out a couple holes to get your dust collection to be somewhat functional. Then you leave a few holes that aren't punched through, and that helps add some more suction from the vacuum to hold the pad on there. So overall, this Cubitron 2 sandpaper, the ones that doesn't have any holes in it, was the one that worked best. So what I'm mainly saying here is that this Cubitron 2 mesh is what has an issue. I thought that the mesh was supposed to be a lot better, but overall, I think it's more expensive than just the normal discs, and it definitely has issues holding on. But again, a lot of you guys have said that you don't have any issues with it, so I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts, because this has kind of been the theme for the past week or so. We've done a few little segments on talking about this stuff, and you know, so this is about as much proof as I can provide in that the mesh stuff does have an issue. So getting away from the down or negative side of things, let's unpack some of this stuff. You know, I don't normally do unboxing on the channel, but like with these daily videos, you know, I'm not really doing anything else today. I might do a little bit of work on the bed project later today. You know, I'll add that to tomorrow's video. But yeah, let's do an unboxing because I think it might be kind of fun to just see what some of these tools look like, to play around with them. I definitely want to try just making some cuts today, just so I have an idea of what I'm working with here. Okay, so first up is the GRS 16. So this is just a straight edge guide for either a Makita, Festool, or Triton track saw. Oh. All right, nothing like making packaging easy to damage so you can't return things. Wow, fancy. Free sticker. That's always exciting. But anyway, yeah, you can see that it's a super simple thing, but the trick is here that it's a precisionally machined chunk of, I believe it's aluminum. Yeah, it just clamps right onto your track, gives you a perfectly square edge. So that basically takes your track and turns it into a giant T-square. So what I read is if you have a track saw, you really want to have one of these things or some kind of angle gauge for it, because these are supposed to be really, really good. Next up, we got the actual guide rail. Again, in more packaging that is super easy to damage. But I'll give it to Makita. It's pretty decently well packaged in there. Now, the number one thing that I've read that people complain about when buying any, doesn't matter what brand of track saw, is you need to check the track. So I'm going to make sure I do that, check it for, square and flat and all that before I fully start cutting into it. But overall, that's a pretty clean looking track right there. I mean, that looks good to me. We got some nice rubber or plastic. Oh, not rubber. So we got rubber on the edges there, foam on the back here for gripping. I'll be honest, I don't fully understand how that works because the foam definitely feels slightly thicker than the plastic that's on the front, or that rubber that's on the front edge that's meant to be cut off. So I have no idea how track saws work, but I'm excited to get using it. So now the piece de resistance, if I can get into it anyway. I mean, again, it's not Festool. I'm not expecting to open the box and have angels sing or anything, but yeah, that's a saw. That is a big saw. Jeez. I have no idea what size my my little rigid one is, but overall, that's a. Oof. I'm going to be reading through most of the instruction manual before we actually kick this thing off. I just want to say that because a lot of people just throw out the instruction manual, don't ever actually look at it. I peruse it, I'll say that much. I think it is important to try and look through, especially the areas that the manufacturer obviously wants you to look through. So yeah, that's just one of those things I will say is that you should definitely, especially when it's a new tool like this. Like when I bought my Bosch sander, I didn't read through the instruction manual because it's just a random orbital sander. There's nothing you really need to know about. But with this track saw, there's a lot going on that I don't know anything about. So I'm definitely going to just take a quick read through this, figure out what I'm doing with it before I actually start cutting with it. Overall, that's a pretty beefy looking tool. It comes with a blade installed. That's always nice, I guess. I mean, kind of kind of an expected thing. Yeah, I really. Okay, so we got. Let's see what we got here. Okay. The one thing that I do find interesting about these Traxxars, though, is that they don't have a whole lot of cutting distance. Like, even from the base of this thing down, we have about 2 inches. Then when you mount it on the track, you're going to lose probably at least 1/4 of an inch there. Maybe, maybe not 1/4 inch. But they don't cut very deep. The only annoying thing about Makita is that it's all in millimeters, which is, very, very European of them. But again, we do have that depth stop on there, so that's where I'm really excited to use that for like our tenons and that, because we can fairly easily set this up so that when we plunge in, we just cut our shoulder lines of our tenons. So overall, this is going to be way cleaner than using the router to cut the tenons, and faster overall, because I just lay the track down with the square and all that on it. It'll just square right up against the board and make my pass, and I know that I'm good to go. Everything is very easy to line up. There's no 2 and 25, 30 seconds measurements that I have to make every single time I need to cut one of those tenons. So, okay, food has been eaten, instructions have been read, and I have a pretty good understanding of how to use this thing now, and it overall is actually not that complex, which is really beautiful. So I will say the only thing I don't quite understand is there's 2 little black knobs on the side here. I have no idea what those do. I couldn't find anything in the instructions about those specifically, so I'm going to keep reading and I think they might be for some accessory, something like that, because I didn't read through all the accessory components, so that would be my guess, is that's for some kind of add-on accessory later on. But anyway, what is really cool that I'm finding about this is that they really did think about a lot of different stuff. So these 2 little knobs, these kind of like wing nut looking things, those are specifically so that we can get the saw perfectly level. So like I experienced with the rigid saw here, where we are always cutting at just a little bit of an angle there, what we can do with this saw is if we're noticing that we're cutting at that little bit of an angle, we can adjust it, which is the beautiful thing here compared to just a normal circular saw. So this has some minor adjustments just built into it that we can use to make sure we're staying nice and square here. So we also have this little locking knob, so all this does is just pushes a little disc out that sticks into the track here and just adds a little bit of a hook to it so that the saw can't tip to the right side. Because when you put the saw on the track, you can tip it in like that and lay it down, or you can just not have this thing extended and just drop it in. Either way works, but that tab prevents you from accidentally tipping the saw this way, which I think is a really good feature. Again, pretty important to have. Obviously, we have the depth stuff on the front here, so we can use this to go to a more controlled depth, which again, we'll be using that on our tenons. On the front here, we have different angles, all with specific detents. So right now we're at 22.5, and I don't know what the other one is. Honestly, I don't really know exactly how all this stuff works, but it seems something works here. Again, I got a lot more reading to do. I don't plan to really be using angles. I have no idea clearly what I'm doing here because it's kind of jammed up. I'm not going to mess with it too much. So there is one kind of interesting feature on here though, and it's this little locking knob right back here. So when you push that little knob in, it limits your plunge to 2 to 3 centimeters. Again, it's weird that the manual would give you a range there. I would think that it would be a set thing, but it says 2 to 3 millimeters. And so you can use that for making a scoring cut. So if we're working with melamine, basically any plywood, you can very easily make a scoring cut, which will leave a lot less tear out and all that. Then you can go and finish it through with a through cut. So overall, I'm fairly impressed with everything that goes into this. There is one feature that I kind of forgot about when I was looking into this, a feature that I kind of wanted, but I don't know, unless I want to return this and go Festool, I'm not going to get, and that is a riving knife. So the Festool plunge saws, when you plunge down, they have a riving knife that comes out the back here, and that is a massive thing to help prevent kickback. Now, for the most part, I'm only going to be using this on finished panels. So the chances of us getting pretty nasty kickback, I've never experienced kickback with my rigid circular saw. I've had areas where it's binded up, I've had stuff like that, but it's one of those features that I'm not super obsessed, about needing to have on a tool. Anyway, enough talking, we're just going to try and make some cuts in this. So I've got some MDF, I've got some melamine I want to try cutting, and we've got that leftover stretcher from this project here that we're going to try cutting. Even though it's only a 4-inch section, I've still got a 55-inch long track here. I'm just going to set it up and see what I can do with it, and that'll really tell me whether or not I actually need to cut this track down, because I'm still kind of on the fence about that. Okay, so you remember how I said I didn't know what these knobs were for? I obviously just missed it in the instructions, but what that does is it takes all the slop out of the track. So when I put the saw on, I was like, there seems like there's a lot of slop to this. It's not going to cut very straight if it's wobbling around like that. So all I did was I was just messing around with those knobs thinking that they must do something. And I tightened them up enough, and now we don't have any slop to this. It's sliding perfectly straight through the track. It's absolutely beautiful. I'm actually genuinely impressed by how well it actually glides. So. Okay, so I just finished doing a little bit of the 5-cut method on this piece of MDF here. Now, I didn't not doing it actually because there's a whole bunch of like actual math in that involved. I don't really care that much. All I want to know is that when I make a cut, is it going to be square to the edge that I'm referencing? So again, I only have a little 6-inch square here, which is probably something I need to solve, and I probably should have solved when I was at Lee Valley. But when I check it, it's actually perfectly squared up. So the fact that we can just drop this track on with this little guide piece back here, line it up to whatever edge we want to match, and it cuts a nice square line, I think that's perfect. That's all I really need. And again, the most important thing for what we're going to be doing on this project anyway, is that on this 6-inch square, I can see that I'm good. So those 4-inch boards, I don't think are going to be any issue. Anyway, I'm going to bring that piece of 8-quarter walnut over here, and we're just going to try it again. I think it's going to be hard to actually get the track balanced over that 4-inch piece, but we're just going to give it a shot because right now I just kind of want to know what the limits of this saw are, because, you know, again, if it can't handle that 8-quarter stock, then there's really no point owning a saw like that. That is a perfect cut, both on the vertical and the horizontal. Oh, you guys do not know how good this feels right about now. So it's definitely a little bit sketchy. So what I'm going to do when I actually have to do boards like this is I'll put a couple of them on the workbench. That way the track on the far side has something to actually lay on, because just having that whole 55-inch section when I was doing this is a little bit clumsy. But just by moving this GRS square up a little bit, we got the center of balance of the track a little bit better. So I may decide to not even cut down the track, because if I don't have to cut it down, I really don't want to. If I could just support it on either side. But I also don't know if it'd be a bad thing to have a nice short track for doing stuff exactly like this. But that is exactly what I wanted to see. And I tried, and I intentionally right there did the worst case scenario. So I did the full cut on the first pass, which is something that we determined is something you don't really want to do. So when I'm actually doing those work pieces with the hard maple, what I will do is I will do a couple passes. So I'll do like 2 smaller passes. Just that way we're getting the best results as possible. And the reason that this is working so much better than the circular saw is just, I think it's purely because we're following that track. There's an actual guide for this thing to follow. So I am super psyched. This is the solution to so many problems in the shop. Everything from long boards to tabletops to cutting breadboard ends to just generally working with panels. And there is one thing that is really important to add to the video here. This is in no way sponsored by Makita, KMS Tools. Who else did I talk about? Lee Valley. I think that's it. Or the Bottle Depot that I talked about at the very beginning. This is not a sponsored video. No one has sponsored me to say any of this. And this is also not like a recommendation or a review. I've literally owned this saw for 4 hours and I've only been playing with it for about 2.5. So this is not a glowing recommendation. This is not a go out and buy yourself a Makita Traxxar. That will come probably in the next year or so. You know, I usually use a tool for at least a year before I try to drop a review or recommendation on it. So we're going to see how this thing holds up. But right now I am just super thrilled because, as you guys saw in this bed frame that I'm working on right now, it has been such a nightmare just getting these panels sized up, getting the long board sized up properly. Whereas now all I have to do is lay this track, push that square right up against our nice straight edges, make a cut, and we now have a square board. And the best part is this isn't just a single duty thing. I can use this to help cut the tenons, all that kind of stuff. Then obviously I know you all want to see the Makita sustainer cases or stackable locking cases. I think sustainer is specific to Festool. Whatever. Yes, the beautiful case. Look how awesome it is. I finally have a big plastic box that is going to take up room in my shop. I don't know why I got it, but it was $1 and I don't really regret paying $1 for a giant plastic thing. So it might be useful for something. I don't plan to keep the saw in it. Actually, I might. It's a pretty expensive tool that I kind of want to keep safe. So maybe I will end up using this. So as always, guys, I do hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you in the next one.